two people can sit for the same number of hours in a day, same commute, same desk, same evening on the sofa. But the new question is sharper than total sitting time. What if the body also cares about whether those hours arrive as one long block, or as smaller pieces broken by movement? Most of us count sitting in the simplest way. We ask how many hours. That is useful, but it may miss the shape of the day. A long, unbroken spell at a desk is not quite the same signal as sitting that is repeatedly interrupted by standing, walking, or small household movement. A large UK Biobank study tested this pattern. It followed 91,292 adults for a median of 12.38 years. Each person wore a wrist accelerometer, so sitting and movement came from a device, not from memory. That matters because people are not very good at recalling how long they sit. The important finding was not simply that more sitting was linked with more cancer risk. It was that long, unbroken sitting behaved differently from sitting that was broken up. The same total time could carry a different pattern in the data. In the study, sedentary behavior meant waking time spent sitting or reclining with very little effort. Prolonged sitting meant an unbroken bout of roughly 30 minutes or more. That sounds ordinary because it is ordinary. A meeting, a film, a train ride, a work block. Interrupted sitting meant the seated time was cut by movement. Not necessarily a workout, just enough change to stop the block from staying solid. The point is not that standing for a moment is magic. The point is that repeated movement changes the pattern the body experiences. That split is the whole story. Prolonged sitting rose with cancer deaths and cancer cases. Interrupted sitting moved the other way in the analysis. So the useful question becomes less about guilt over sitting and more about the texture of the stillness. There is one careful detail here. Swapping prolonged sitting for interrupted sitting alone did not show a clear benefit in every model. The firmer signal appeared when prolonged sitting was replaced by actual physical activity. The break matters most when it contains movement. The reason this matters is that unbroken sitting does not announce itself. It gathers quietly. A commute. 2 focused work blocks. Lunch at the desk. A long evening program. Long sitting already tracks with heart disease and type 2 diabetes too, so cancer is part of a wider sitting story. Nothing feels dramatic while it happens, but the blocks start to stack. In the study, each extra hour of prolonged sitting was associated with about a 10% higher hazard of cancer death. Overall cancer cases rose more gently, closer to 3% per added hour. Cancers tied to obesity and type 2 diabetes sat between those two patterns. These are hazard ratios, so they compare risk between groups over time. Absolute numbers keep this in proportion. Cancer deaths ranged from about 1.3% in the least sedentary group to about 2.8% in the most sedentary group. That is not a reason for panic. It is a reason to take the pattern seriously. The curve was also telling. It looked close to a straight climb, with no obvious safe ledge where prolonged sitting stopped mattering. That does not mean every extra minute is dangerous. It means the pattern looked gradual, not like a simple on-off switch. One common explanation also becomes too simple. Earlier work suggested body weight might drive much of the link between sitting and cancer. In this study, the association held across body size. Leaner and heavier participants showed a similar pattern. Still, association is not the same as explanation. This study measured behavior and cancer outcomes. It did not watch cancer form inside the body. But wider research gives plausible routes for why long unbroken stillness could matter over years. The fastest route is metabolic. After long sitting, blood glucose and insulin can rise. Short breaks, especially standing or strolling after sitting, can blunt that surge within minutes. The body seems to respond to small interruptions more quickly than our habits notice. Another pathway is chronic low-grade inflammation. Think of it as a quiet immune signal that stays slightly switched on. Over time, that kind of background irritation can damage healthy tissue. Movement appears to help turn the volume down. Prolonged sitting may also affect insulin and IGF-1, which stands for insulin-like growth factor 1. These are growth signals. They are not bad by themselves, but chronic elevation can keep cell growth machinery more active than we would want. Then there is ectopic fat. That means fat stored inside organs and tissues where it does not belong, such as the liver, muscle, or pancreas. Inactivity can encourage that spillover, and that can disturb metabolism in ways linked with disease. A fourth possibility is immune surveillance. The immune system helps spot abnormal cells. Physical inactivity may weaken that watch. If the watch becomes less sharp, faulty cells may have a better chance of escaping early detection. These mechanisms are important, but they remain partly theoretical for this study. The researchers did not test the molecular steps directly. The honest reading is this: the behavior pattern is measured clearly, the biology is plausible, and the causal chain still needs testing. The hopeful part of the study comes from the time swap models. Researchers asked what the risk looked like when prolonged sitting was replaced by movement. The technical name is isotemporal substitution, but the simple idea is this: one block of time leaves, another takes its place. Replacing 1 hour of prolonged sitting with light activity was linked with about 12% lower risk of cancer death. Light activity means things like slow walking, washing up, ironing, or small household tasks. That matters because it sits below what many people think of as exercise, and outside the activity current exercise guidance tends to emphasize. Moderate activity also mattered. Replacing 30 minutes of prolonged sitting with an ordinary steady walk was linked with about 8% lower risk of cancer death. The pace is not punishment. It is the kind of walking where breathing changes, but the day still feels normal. For vigorous activity, the time needed was much smaller. Replacing 5 minutes of prolonged sitting with hard effort showed the largest drop in cancer cases in the model. But vigorous effort suits fewer people, so it should not swallow the practical message. The practical meaning is not that everyone needs a harder workout. It is that stillness may be more changeable than it feels. For people who sit most, especially older adults, frail adults, or people managing several conditions, light movement may be the realistic opening. This is where the story has to stay careful. The study was observational. It can show that patterns travel together over time, but it cannot prove that changing sitting patterns cause the cancer risk to change. That difference is not a technicality. It changes the strength of the claim. The activity monitor also captured only a limited slice of behavior. It knew movement, but not context. It could not always tell whether someone was sitting at work, driving, watching television, resting, or dealing with illness. The volunteers were UK-based and generally healthier than the wider population. Some risk reductions were modest, and when cancer is split into many site-specific outcomes, the picture becomes less tidy. A good script should not smooth away that messiness. That is why controlled trials matter. They can test whether deliberately breaking up sitting changes risk markers, and eventually whether it changes disease outcomes. Until then, the best interpretation is cautious but useful. Long, unbroken sitting is a pattern worth interrupting. So the better map is not simply sit less or exercise harder. It is this: the body may notice the shape of stillness. Long blocks appear to carry a different signal from sitting that is broken by real movement. The small break is not a cure. It is a change in the pattern. If you want the full study details, the article and supporting references are linked in the description. The useful takeaway is calm. Sitting time matters, but the way it is accumulated may matter too. And that gives the day more room to change.